Lu endured Agbor's relentless blows, standing her ground despite the pain. However, a sudden powerful kick from Agbor sent her stumbling backward. Breathing heavily, Lu admitted she was getting tired. Meanwhile, Shin, restrained and helpless, recalled Agbor's chilling words: if Lu didn't respond every 10 seconds, Shin would die. Hearing this, Shin's heart sank, fear gripping him as he whispered to himself that it was all over. Agbor launched another kick at Lu, but this time Lu swiftly dodged and retaliated, striking Agbor with her hair. With a sly grin, Lu remarked on her luck. From his restrained position, Shin shouted at Lu to take the fight seriously, his frustration growing. Agbor responded with a vicious kick, hitting Lu hard and declaring it was her turn now, the time for games was over. But before she could press her advantage, she heard Lu laughing behind her and turned in surprise. Lu taunted Shin, pointing out how he trembled while calling her name. Then, in an unexpected move, she pulled out a bottle and took a swig of alcohol mid-fight. Agbor, enraged, threw a flurry of punches, but Lu dodged them effortlessly. Attempting to regain control, Agbor tried to grab Lu's clothes, but Lu slipped free, kissed Agbor's hand mockingly, and delivered a powerful blow that sent her stumbling backward. Laughing maniacally, Agbor urged Lu to kill her, claiming she loved the thrill. But Lu calmly replied that killing went against her family's code. Confused, Agbor questioned what family promises meant. Lu explained that these promises were sacred to her and her family. Agbor scoffed, insisting that the Sakamoto family only had 3 members, and lashed out with a powerful blow. Lu blocked it effortlessly. Anger flashed across Lu's face as she repeated Agbor's insult, calling her a fool. She told Agbor that since arriving in Japan, she had learned so much, only to be dismissed as a fool. Now, with renewed strength, Lu shoved Agbor back and aimed a punch at her, but instead of striking, she gently placed her hands on Agbor's face, leaving her stunned. The entire room fell silent in shock. Suddenly, Lu's demeanor shifted. She blinked, confused, and asked aloud why she was there, who this lady was, and why Shin was tied up like that. Shin, frustrated and angry, muttered that she had woken up at the worst possible time. Agbor, amused, accused Lu of mocking her but dismissed it with a smile. Then, surprising everyone, Agbor declared her love for strong warriors like Lu and hugged her tightly. Seeing this, Shin relaxed, turning to Agbor's men and declaring he was safe now. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Sakamoto explained the components of the explosives he had crafted to Wald. Wald, unimpressed, remarked that Sakamoto would become stronger once he lost weight and that if he really wanted to fight, they should get moving to save his family. But Sakamoto calmly replied that his family didn't need saving, he trusted them completely. Before Wald could respond, Sakamoto delivered a sudden punch to his face with such force that it destroyed part of the building. Without missing a beat, Sakamoto followed up with a powerful kick and a barrage of rapid punches. Wald retaliated, using his weapon to aim a punch at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto struck back simultaneously, shattering Wald's weapon completely. Sakamoto then unleashed a series of lightning-fast punches, overwhelming Wald. Desperate, Wald threw his explosive balls at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto caught them midair before they could detonate. In a brutal twist, he used the explosives as weapons, punching Wald with them and inflicting excruciating pain. Towering over Wald, Sakamoto asked how he had managed to gain such strength. Looking down at his defeated opponent, Sakamoto told Wald that while he was once like him, using his power to hurt others, he now fought to protect his beloved family. With that, he delivered one final crushing punch. 2 people were enjoying the rides at the amusement park when they were suddenly startled by 2 figures flying toward them. The scene then shifted to Sakamoto and Wald seated across from each other in a ride cart. Wald, blood dripping from his mouth, admitted he hadn't given Sakamoto enough credit, acknowledging his toughness. Meanwhile, Sakamoto's wife woke up to find Shin and Lu sleeping nearby. She nudged Shin awake, asking what had brought him there and mentioned that the last place she remembered being was the haunted house. Confused, she asked how they ended up there. Shin explained that he thought they had lost consciousness in the haunted house. When she asked about Sakamoto, Shin admitted he didn't know where he was but quickly promised to find him before dashing off. Back at the amusement park, Sakamoto and Wald had just reached the ground as their ride cart arrived at the station. As they exited, an employee approached them, asking what had happened. Wald dismissed the question, telling her not to worry about how Sakamoto got hurt. The employee clarified she wasn't referring to that, but to the damage done to the cart, insisting they would need to pay for repairs. Wald turned to Sakamoto, conceding defeat and saying he would leave him alone now. Unfazed, Sakamoto ordered 5 meat sandwiches from a nearby restaurant. Despite his earlier admission, Wald commented that he still didn't care about anything Sakamoto had said. While Sakamoto was eating, Wald asked for a bite. Without hesitation, Sakamoto handed him the half-eaten sandwich. Wald, taking the sandwich, joked that even Sakamoto's leftovers were an honor to him. Sakamoto, in his typical calm manner, replied that his leftovers were usually reserved for his family. Just then, Shin arrived, surprised to see Sakamoto and even more shocked by how much weight he had lost. Excited, Shin pulled out his phone and started taking photos. Wald then asked Sakamoto what he planned to do about the gang offering a reward for his assassination. Before Sakamoto could respond, his wife appeared, having overheard the word reward. Her face darkened with anger as she demanded to know what reward they were talking about. Lu quickly tried to distract her, suggesting Hannah go finish playing the games, but Hannah pointed at some candy and insisted she wanted 2 pieces. At that moment, Agbor approached Hannah, commenting that she was spoiled but had great potential. Sakamoto's wife, growing more suspicious, pressed for answers. Sakamoto calmly admitted that there was a bounty on his head and people were trying to kill him. Furious, his wife asked why he hadn't told her sooner. Wald, still munching on a sandwich, interjected, saying Sakamoto probably didn't want her to worry so she could enjoy the amusement park with their daughter. Turning her attention to Wald, she demanded to know who he was. Wald introduced himself as a professional killer. This only fueled her anger as she warned him not to harm her husband. She then turned back to Sakamoto, frustrated that he hadn't confided in her, even though he knew she would eventually find out. Sakamoto tried to explain that he didn't want her to worry, but his wife wasn't having it. "Did you forget our rules?" she snapped, pulling out a book and flipping to a page. She pointed at rule number 6, no secrets between family members. Sakamoto was taken aback, clearly surprised by the book. His wife then told him to share everything from now on. Sakamoto nodded, agreeing without argument. With the issue seemingly resolved, Sakamoto's wife suggested they go watch the show. Wald, still impressed, remarked that Sakamoto's wife was tough too. The scene then shifted to the show where Shin leaned towards Sakamoto. Shin asked Sakamoto how they could solve their current predicament. Sakamoto, ever pragmatic, explained that the only way to cancel the contract on his life was to eliminate the presenter who had submitted it to the gang. But first, they needed to figure out who the presenter was. Agbor chimed in, mentioning that the reward had been issued through GGI, making it difficult to trace the presenter. Bold added that he might be able to get more information from his boss. Shin, never one to mince words, told Bold to grab a phone and call his boss to find out. Bold, annoyed, asked why he should bother. Shin shot back, saying, "Because you're useless otherwise." Bold grumbled about how Shin always demanded too much from people, then reluctantly agreed, saying he would go, and that Agbor would come with him. Before they set out, Shin asked if they had figured out where Don Kawi was yet. Sakamoto, confident as ever, said he knew someone who could lead them to him. On the way to meet the informant, Shin's irritation became apparent. Lu, noticing his mood, asked if he was in pain. Shin scoffed and replied, "No. I just don't get how Sakamoto gained all that weight back so fast." They continued walking until they reached their destination, a quirky office filled with old movies. Shin, confused, asked what kind of place this was. Sakamoto explained that this was an information hub where intel was sold in the form of movies. He pointed them toward the screening room. Inside the screening room, they watched footage revealing Don's presentations. Shin took mental notes of the layout, while Lu, unexpectedly emotional, felt a wave of sadness. After the film ended, they exited the room and Sakamoto went to pay the bill, which turned out to be quite hefty. Shin, surprised, asked how Sakamoto planned to afford it. Sakamoto casually replied that he had saved plenty from his past work. As they prepared to leave, the library employee warned Sakamoto to be careful, hinting that someone from his own team might be behind the bounty. When Sakamoto pressed for more details, the employee shrugged, saying there was no additional information or movies about it. Meanwhile, Nagumo was at a business lunch with several shady figures. When asked about Sakamoto, Nagumo claimed he hadn't seen him in a long time. A man with yellow hair, Shishiai, warned another man named Heio not to interfere, saying Sakamoto could appear at any moment. Heio, skeptical, said it didn't matter and expressed doubts about Nagumo's loyalty before suddenly lunging at him with a knife. Nagumo blocked the strike with a fork and smirked, telling him to save the violence for dinner. The man with yellow hair said to Saraji that he thought this wasn't their fight. Saraji, nonchalant, replied that Shishiai hadn't even eaten his food yet. Shishiai called the chef over and, upon the chef's arrival, slammed his head onto the table, stabbing his hands with a knife for including onions in his dish. At that moment, Mr. Ira entered, greeting the group and introducing himself as a representative from GGI. He praised their gathering, but Heio pointed out that they weren't finished yet, only 4 of them were present. Shishiai noted that 3 others hadn't shown up, including Takamura, who was usually punctual. Nagumo suggested that Takamura might be busy, but Shishiai doubted it, suspecting he had simply forgotten. Ira then presented a photo, explaining that someone from GGI had been wandering around and they needed to handle this matter swiftly. Back with Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu, they arrived at Don's building. Sakamoto instructed them to avoid killing, emphasizing that this would be a covert operation. They suited up in their infiltration gear and entered the building, where 2 guards were patrolling the hallway. Shin quickly tossed a rope around the first guard, making him disappear from sight, while Sakamoto incapacitated the second guard with a swift strike. After neutralizing the threats, they removed their disguises. Lu asked about the location of the leader's office. Shin, exasperated, asked, "Didn't you pay attention to the expensive film we just watched?" He explained that the leader's office was on the upper floor and that they needed to jump from an adjacent window to access it. When Shin turned to Sakamoto for confirmation, Sakamoto sheepishly admitted, "I was sleeping through the movie." In another part of the building, a guard was washing his hands when he heard a suspicious noise. He drew his gun and opened the window cautiously, only to find Sakamoto pointing a gun directly at his head from above. Before the guard could react, Sakamoto shocked him with a taser. They entered the room, and Lu quickly tied the guard up with a rope, grinning as she remarked, "I'm really enjoying playing spy." They made their way to the leader's room, with Shin whispering to Sakamoto that he couldn't hear any thoughts from anyone in the vicinity. This silence unsettled him, leading him to believe the place was completely empty. As they entered the room, they were met with a grisly sight. Numerous guards lay dead on the ground. In the center of the room, sitting calmly in a chair, was Nagumo. Nagumo looked up and smirked at Sakamoto. "Caught me red-handed, huh?" he quipped. Shin, still processing the scene, asked Nagumo what he was doing there. With an eerie calm, Nagumo replied that the upper management employees had been killed by him. He then turned to Sakamoto and, with a chilling smile, announced that Sakamoto had to die too. Suddenly, Nagumo produced a knife and vanished from sight, reappearing behind Shin in a flash. He drove the knife into Shin's neck. Shin instinctively grabbed his neck, expecting to feel the warm flow of blood, but there was nothing. Confused, he found no wound. Nagumo burst into laughter, revealing that the knife was a fake. It was all a joke. Infuriated, Shin and Lu launched a series of strikes at Nagumo, who continued to laugh, explaining that he hadn't killed anyone there. He claimed he had arrived to find all the guards already dead and that he was there on a different mission. Sakamoto, his patience wearing thin, asked Nagumo what had really brought him there. Nagumo's tone shifted, becoming more serious. He explained that he was looking for something specific. Many professional killers had been murdered recently, and he believed there was a connection. Shin, skeptical, asked what was unusual about that. After all, killers getting killed wasn't exactly rare. Nagumo clarified that these deaths weren't the result of typical fights. Over 100 fighters from organizations tied to GGI had been slaughtered in a brutal, calculated manner. He suspected the killings were a message to GGI. Shin's eyes widened. "That's a quarter of the professional killers," he muttered. Nagumo nodded grimly. He added that after each massacre, an X mark was left on the wall, a signature. Presence back at Sakamoto's store. Shin sighed, frustrated. "After all this, we're back to square one," he muttered. As they entered, they were met by a man wielding a knife, demanding to know where Sakamoto was. Without hesitation, Lu taught Hana to press a hidden button behind the counter. With a clatter, a stash of weapons dropped from the ceiling, landing squarely on the intruder's head and knocking him out cold. Sakamoto reflected on Nagumo's warning: if he was only as strong as Bolid, he was as good as finished. Determined, he announced that since they didn't know who was behind the killings, they needed to prepare. They would train relentlessly to defend themselves against any future attacks. Later, another man entered the store, seemingly just another customer. But before he could speak, Lu, still on high alert, smashed a bottle over his head, sending him to the floor with a knife falling from his pocket and blood trickling from his scalp. The assassin muttered to himself about the cost of feeding his pet bird, lamenting that it took 10,000 a month just for food. If he ate sparingly, he could make it to 20,000, but he wouldn't survive the rest of the month like that. He convinced himself that all his problems would be solved if he killed Sakamoto and got the billion-dollar reward. He would finally be able to improve his life completely. Back at the store, Shin sighed as he swept broken glass from the floor. Frustrated, he remarked that he had been cleaning up way too often lately because of all the assassins barging in. Lu added that the store itself had also taken quite a bit of damage from all the fights. Sakamoto, ever practical, stated that they needed to repair everything. Shin, however, reminded him that they didn't have enough money to cover all the expenses. That's when Shin proposed entering a competition where they could win money to fund the repairs. Just as they were discussing the idea, an assassin entered the store and bluntly asked for Sakamoto. He claimed he would leave them alone if they simply told him where Sakamoto was. He then turned to Sakamoto himself, mocking him by calling him fat. Unfazed, Sakamoto coolly responded that he had no idea who that was. The assassin, confused, pointed out that the store's name outside literally said, Sakamoto. Sakamoto shrugged and told him that plenty of stores shared that name. The assassin, visibly frustrated, slumped in disappointment. "Then how am I supposed to find him?" he groaned. Shin, reading the assassin's thoughts, found them completely trivial. His mind was almost entirely preoccupied with food. The assassin then mentioned that he had asked an elderly woman outside and she had told him this was Sakamoto's store and that Sakamoto himself was inside. Growing impatient, Shin, now visibly irritated, insisted that no one named Sakamoto was there. He exaggerated, claiming there were over 200 million stores named Sakamoto worldwide. The assassin's eyes widened in disbelief. 200 million, he muttered in despair, before breaking down. He admitted he didn't even have the money to travel to all of them. His frustration turned into sorrow as he admitted he couldn't even afford breakfast. His stomach growled, and his eyes welled with tears as he stood outside the store, watching them through the window while crying profusely. Moved by his pathetic state, Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu gave him some food. Overjoyed, the assassin thanked them profusely before setting off once again on his quest to find Sakamoto. As he left, the three waved him off, telling him he was welcome to return anytime. Shin turned to Sakamoto with a sigh. "I didn't think assassins this dumb actually existed." Sakamoto replied, "There are plenty of them, and they never stop being dumb." Elsewhere, the assassin set up a tent, preparing to live in it for the time being. He fondly mentioned that it was a gift from his grandmother and that it would serve him well for a few days, at least until he became rich. As he settled in, he was briefly lost in thought, remembering the time when he was in the Assassin's Guild. He recalled the humiliation of being deemed unfit to become a high-ranking assassin and being rejected. Shaking off the painful memory, he clenched his fists and declared that he would prove them all wrong. They would regret ever doubting him. Just then, a strong gust of wind blew through the area, ripping his tent from the ground. He frantically tried to catch it, but it was swept away before he could do anything. As he mourned the loss of his only shelter, a stray piece of paper smacked him in the face. Peeling it off, he read the words printed on it: "Competition. Grand prize, 1 million. His eyes lit up with excitement. With that amount of money, he could buy a house. Meanwhile, Shin and Sakamoto arrived at the competition venue. Shin looked around in awe, impressed by how grand the event looked. They went to collect their communication devices, which would allow them to stay in touch during the competition. As Shin tested one out, he commented on how cool the devices were. Just then, Lu arrived to cheer for Sakamoto. Shin approached her, asking why she hadn't signed up to participate. Lu scoffed, crossing her arms. "Why would I waste my time on a stupid competition?" Shin, exasperated, reminded her that they needed money to fix the store. Before she could respond, a loud commotion erupted nearby. Turning their heads, they saw the assassin from earlier entering the competition grounds, this time with his pet bird perched on his shoulder. A competition staff member stopped him, informing him that he wasn't allowed to participate. The assassin, desperate, pleaded with her. "Please. I need the money." His face scrunched up, and within seconds, he broke into tears. The competition officials scowled at him, informing him that participation was only allowed for teams of 2 to 5 members. Hearing this, the assassin's face fell into utter despair, realizing he couldn't compete alone. Just then, Lu called out to his pet bird, catching the assassin's attention instantly. He ran toward Shin, grabbing onto his leg and desperately begging for help. His dramatic pleas only irritated Shin, who sighed in frustration. Begrudgingly, Shin grabbed a sign-up sheet and angrily wrote Sakamoto and the assassins' names together as a team. With the team now officially registered, the competition host greeted all the participants, explaining the rules. It was a paintball-style shooting game held in the main street, and at the end of the event, all participants would have to help clean up the area. Shin, amused, remarked, "That sounds fun." Sakamoto, however, dryly noted, "We're basically just cleaning the neighborhood for free." Now officially teammates, Shin, Sakamoto, and the assassin gathered to strategize. The assassin, still unsure, asked, "What do we do now?" Shin sighed and instructed him, "Shoot everyone except us. We're on the same team." Without hesitation, the assassin unleashed a barrage of shots, eliminating the first 4 opponents in an instant. Shin stared in shock. "Wait, how did he do that? He's actually skilled." Before he could process it, an opponent fired at Shin from behind. He quickly dodged and fired back, eliminating 2 more competitors. Meanwhile, 2 contestants tried to ambush Sakamoto from behind, but Sakamoto swiftly grabbed one of their paintball guns and fired at both of them simultaneously, taking them out. As the battle continued, Sakamoto started mentally listing what he would buy with the prize money: bulletproof glass and additional shells for instant noodles. The assassin, exhilarated, exclaimed, "I have teammates now. This is awesome." Shin rolled his eyes. "You really think we're friends now?" The assassin, grinning, replied, "You guys are pros. Let's keep going. He then volunteered to act as bait to lure out more enemies. As he ran off, Lu shouted from the sidelines, "Go Sakamoto! Take them all down! You can do it!" Hearing Lu's encouragement, the assassin abruptly stopped in his tracks. He turned back to look at her. "Wait, you know Sakamoto?" He then pulled out a photo and compared it to Sakamoto. "This picture looks nothing like him." Lu approached him and casually pointed out, "That's because this was him when he was thinner. Look at the glasses. Look at the hair." Shin, realizing the danger, immediately yanked Lu away before the assassin could put the pieces together. The assassin burst into laughter. "There's no way this guy isn't the Sakamoto I'm after." He then casually tossed the photo onto the ground, but in the next instant, he raised his gun, aiming directly at Sakamoto. His cheerful expression vanished. "I don't like being lied to." Both men stood in a standoff, their weapons aimed at each other. Before either could shoot, a group of competitors suddenly ambushed them, firing from all directions. The shots forced them to scatter. Shin quickly took cover and returned fire, eliminating several opponents. Sakamoto did the same, neutralizing the threats around him. Meanwhile, the assassin whistled for his pet bird, which swooped down and dropped a weapon into his hands. Now armed with a more powerful gun, he took aim at Sakamoto and fired. Sakamoto instinctively blocked the shot with his hand, but the impact left a wound. He glanced at his injury but remained composed. The assassin smirked. "I'll reposition for a better shot." Without hesitation, he sprinted away. Shin, furious, tried to chase after him, but Sakamoto stopped him. "We need to handle this carefully," he warned. "He's a sniper. If you rush in blindly, you'll get shot." Carefully, Sakamoto stepped out from a passageway. A gunshot rang out. A bullet struck a glass sign above him, shattering it. The shot also ripped through Sakamoto's shirt, but he dodged the bullet at the last second. From his hidden position, the assassin cursed in frustration. He dodged again. Then, over the competition's communication device, his voice rang out, "You dodged that shot too, huh?" Shin dismissed the sniper shot as nothing more than a random ricochet. However, Sakamoto quickly corrected him, stating that it wasn't random at all. He explained that the bullet that grazed him had spun in an unusual manner, leading him to believe that it was specifically designed for controlled rebounds. The sniper, a seasoned assassin, confirmed Sakamoto's suspicion. He proudly explained that the bullet was a triple-dimension ricochet round, designed so that no one could track its trajectory or predict its rebound. Shin, unimpressed, called out the sniper, asking, "So after telling us we were friends, you still want to kill us?" The assassin scoffed at the question. "Don't be naive. We're assassins first before we're friends," he replied coldly. He then explained that once he set his sights through his scope, there was only one thought in his mind, hitting his target. Without hesitation, he fired 3 rounds at them. Sakamoto and Shin sprinted for cover as the bullets ricocheted unpredictably, one nearly hitting Sakamoto's face. They continued evading the shots as bullets came from multiple angles, each expertly placed. Eventually, they managed to hide behind a staircase, momentarily escaping the assassin's line of sight. The sniper, now observing from his vantage point, acknowledged that they had fought well. As he reloaded, his mind drifted to the past, back to his childhood. He remembered how he had struggled in races, failing to win. He recalled his combat training, where he never managed to outmatch his opponents. He had been a failure at everything, unable to stand alongside his friends because he was simply not good enough, except for one thing. The only thing he had ever been truly talented at was sniping. He had honed his skills until he could hit any target with precision. He then recalled the day he approached the Major Assassins Guild, confidently declaring that he was the best sniper they would ever have. However, the guild's recruiter dismissed him immediately. "You only have one skill," the recruiter said flatly. "That's not enough. If you want to be an assassin, you need to learn more than just sniping. He emphasized that assassins didn't get to choose their tasks, they had to handle whatever mission was given to them. The sniper then recalled a humiliating moment during a gang fight where he had been given only a knife. He had been utterly useless, unable to fight in close combat. When he tried to escape, he tripped and fell, further cementing his failure. With no future as a field agent, he was relegated to meaningless desk jobs. Eventually, a senior assassin bluntly told him to quit, saying he wasn't cut out for assassination work. His pride shattered, he left the guild in disgrace. Soon after, he received a notification on his device, a mission to kill Sakamoto. It was his chance, his only chance to prove himself. Back in the present, he steadied his aim and took another shot at Sakamoto and Shin. But once again, neither of them was hit. Shin smirked and spoke into his communicator, "Turn off your microphone." The assassin was startled. "I heard everything," Shin continued. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself." He then shouted, hoping to shake the sniper's confidence. The assassin, irritated, pulled off his earpiece. "You think yelling at me will shake my focus? It won't work," he muttered. At that moment, Sakamoto silently picked up a small rock from the ground. With incredible force, he hurled it at the sniper. The impact shattered the sniper's rifle completely, sending him tumbling to the ground. Stunned and disoriented, the sniper looked up in shock. I can't kill this man," he murmured. "He's far too strong." The event announcer's voice rang through the speakers, and the winners of the competition are Sakamoto's team. The crowd erupted in cheers as Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu claimed their grand prize. Afterward, they retreated to a quiet spot, where the sniper broke down into tears. "I'm useless. I can't even snipe properly anymore. I don't know how to kill." His voice trembled with frustration. Sakamoto stepped forward and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't say that," he said. "You're incredibly skilled. In fact, you're the best sniper I've ever seen." As they prepared to leave, Shin casually tossed a small portion of their winnings to the sniper. The assassin caught it and frowned. "Wait, is this really all I get?" Shin grinned. "Well, considering all the damage you caused to the city, this is about right."